Hello friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. The video that I'm going to be doing today is books that you could read in a day. So this is sort of just my rapid fire-ish recommendations for short books that I believe that if you were, say you had a day to yourself where you just wanted to read and you were looking for a book that you could get through, if you just wanted to sit down and finish it, these are those recommendations. Because I know that we're all in that mood sometimes, and I thought that I would put together a list of books that I have read that I think that you could do this with. So I've split this up into 3 categories, the first of which is books that are less than 250 pages, the second one is books that are around 250 to 300, and then the honorable mentions are books that are a little longer, but I firmly believe that you could blow through if you were feeling a little more ambitious. So I decided to include them still. So let's get into my first category, which is books that are less than 250 pages. And these are honestly in no particular order. I was just looking through and compiling my list. So the very first one that I have on here is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. And I have these books in the format of the complete trilogy of 5. So that is a longer book altogether, but the individual books in this series are quite short, with Hitchhiker's Guide only being 193 pages. And I know that a lot of people have heard of Hitchhiker's Guide, so I don't necessarily need to pitch it, but this is a very absurdist classic sci-fi tale about our main character realizing that Earth is about to basically be blown up as part of an intergalactic construction zone because they're going to run a highway through where Earth is going to be or something like that. So our main character leaves Earth with an alien right before this happens, and then from there goes on, honestly, just absolutely the most absurd journey. It's been quite a while since I've personally read this, so I forget some of the details, but it's so much fun and I want to reread it. The second book is The 5 People That You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom, and this is another one that it's been a while since I've read it, but this book is only 196 pages long. It is an easy read as well, and this is sort of a reflection, a philosophical reflection on after the end of your life, you meet 5 people that were in some way significant to your life, and they might not be the person or people that you expect them to be. And it's sort of a reflection on how there are different connections and threads throughout your life that were significant, and how things come together, and how you can kind of only understand your life by looking back at it once it's finished. So I thought that this was a really interesting concept, and I enjoyed it, and it is, again, very short. The third book on here, which honestly needs no pitch at all, is The Philosopher's Stone, which is the first Harry Potter book, coming in at 223 pages, and I only put officially the first book on here, but all 3 of the first 3 Harry Potter books are extremely short, and you could probably read each of those in a day if you'd like to. So those are sort of honorable mentions as well, but those are definitely quick and fun, and honestly, do they even need to be on here? Everyone knows about them. The fourth book that I have is And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Fredrik Backman, and this comes in at only 76 pages. This is a novella, and this is a very emotional character study on a man and his grandfather, and his grandfather has dementia, and his grandfather sort of The idea of And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer is that as his grandfather's dementia progresses, it gets harder for him to come back to himself and recognize the people from his life. So this, honestly, I should reread it. It is such an emotional, deep, really interesting character study, and it is such a short little tale that you can definitely read it in one sitting, but it is really impactful. Number 5, and those of you who have been watching my channel for a bit knew that this had to be on here, is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, coming in at only 181 pages. And I have a version that's a little bit longer, but that is the illustrated edition, so that's why. And The Ocean at the End of the Lane, I personally read it in one sitting about a year ago. It was just captivating, and it flows so well that it is just very easy to read. This is a magical realism story about a boy who has grown up into a man, and he has gone back to visit a place that he lived as a child, and when he is back there, some memories resurface of something that he experienced when he was a child that sort of only resurfaces in his memory when he comes back and visits where he used to live. And it is very, very whimsical, and it is so cool. I've been trying to get as many people as I can to read The Ocean at the End of the Lane, so this is definitely one that you can read in one day. Next up is The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. Oh my, I don't remember how to say his name. It has been, first of all, this is 213 pages, and it has been a long time since I read The Perks of Being a Wallflower, so I'm not going to say much about the content, but this is almost like a modern classic. A lot of people probably know that a movie was made about this with Logan Lerman and Emma Watson, and this was a book that I loved in high school, and that is the last time that I read it. However, it is very short. I would love to reread it, and it can definitely be read all at once. Next up, I have The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson, which comes in at 175 pages. And this is a very interesting one because Brandon Sanderson writes a lot of very long series in his multiverse universe, The Cosmere, which is, it's great and I love them, but that can be intimidating to people, understandably. And so I think that if you're looking to get into Brandon Sanderson and see whether he would be for you, The Emperor's Soul would be a great choice because he packs so much into that 175 pages, but it's easy to get through. It's engaging, but he just manages to showcase his plotting, magic systems, and world building so well in such a short amount of pages that I really love The Emperor's Soul. And again, it can just be flown through easily. So the next two are sort of one entity, because that is The Empress of Salt and Fortune and When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, both by Nhi Vo, and these are novellas from the same series, the Singing Hills cycle. And I absolutely loved both of these novellas. We're following a sort of scholar named Chi, and they are basically recording the stories and histories of the world that they live in. So they're traveling around to different places, and they will record the stories that they find there. And we're experiencing the stories that they find in these places, and that's what these novellas are. So they are both very whimsical and beautifully written, and The Empress of Salt and Fortune is 112 pages, while When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain is 128 pages. So they are both each very short and sweet. Like I said, beautifully written. You could probably get through both of these in one day if you wanted to, so I would highly recommend. And then the 10th and last book that I have in the category of less than 250 pages is Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, which I just read recently. It comes in at 112 pages, and this is a novella about two men, George and Lenny, who travel together and work together in the countryside of, I believe, California. And so they find manual labor jobs together. George is a sort of small, clever, witty man who travels with Lenny, who is a really, really big, kind of gentle giant sort of character who has essentially the mind of a child. So he kind of needs someone to take care of him, and George kind of does that. And this whole novella is sort of a reflection on the American dream as they try to work towards buying their own property together. And it is a really, really simple but impactful story because of the themes that are explored, and it is easy to read this in one sitting or one day if you would like to. So next up, we have the books that are somewhere sort of between 250 and 300 pages. And so this sort of depends on the type of reader that you are. If you're feeling a little bit more ambitious, and I know that there are a lot of people who can read really fast, especially when a story is really engaging and compelling. And personally, I think that those types of readers would not have any issue getting through a 250 to 300 page book in a day if that's what they feel like doing. So the first book that I have in this category is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which comes in at 264 pages. And this is a very compelling story. So Agatha Christie has basically written about 10 characters who are seemingly unrelated, but they have all been invited under false pretenses to this island, and there has been some sort of reason given to basically call each of them to this island. And once they're there, things start to get really interesting. So all of these people are basically alone together on this island. They don't now have a way off now that they're there, and people start dying one by one. And that is the whole concept of the title, And Then There Were None, because we are slowly counting down as each person dies under mysterious circumstances. The people obviously start to get suspicious of each other. They don't know who the killer in their midst could be. And I love Agatha Christie. I love the way that she crafts a mystery, and I think that this is one of her best. So you could definitely blow through this in one day. The next one that I have is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, which is, of course, a classic. And I think that, first of all, this comes in at 277 pages, but I think that The Catcher in the Rye is heavily dependent on the type of reader that you are. Some people would probably find this no sweat to get through in a day, whereas others would want to take their time to really dissect the themes in this book, because there is a lot of symbolism and thematic impact in The Catcher in the Rye. So I definitely think that you could get through this in a day. It kind of just depends on whether you want to. Next up, I have In a Holidays by Christina Lauren, which actually comes in at 307 pages, so it's a little bit longer. However, this is definitely a compelling read, and it is light and fluffy and easy to get through, but it still has a engaging plot that you want to have resolved, and the fact that it's easy to get through makes it easy to just one more chapter, like I'm gonna keep reading it. I personally finished this in one sitting. I read it in one night, and it was very easy for me. I think that maybe this has a little bit bigger of font, so it's not a dense 307 pages for sure, and just by the nature of it being a romance and sort of fun, I think that it's definitely doable. Next up, I have another classic and a play, which is Romeo and Juliet by, of course, Shakespeare. And this comes in at 281 pages, which I'm not gonna lie is longer than I thought it was. And I think that the reason for that is because, as many people know since this is hugely famous, Romeo and Juliet takes place over the course of about a week, but so much happens. The drama is unbelievable. Of course, because it is a whirlwind that ends in a tragedy, but it's all happening so fast, and I think that that's what makes it really engaging and easy to keep reading it. I debated putting this on here because I know that Shakespeare is an acquired taste. It's something that you do in school, but I believe that when you come back to it after having studied it, it actually makes it easier to read his works, and coming back to it as an older person, it gives you more cultural context on some of the things that he actually did than reading it when you're 14 and you don't understand anything. I personally think that it would be doable, but again, this depends on the type of reader that you are, because Romeo and Juliet can definitely be broken down into the tiniest pieces and studied like so many students all over the world do. So that is another possibility. The final book that I have in the 250 to 300 category is Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, and this one comes in at 303 pages, so again, a little bit over, But the thing about this book is that a lot of it is written in the form of exchanging emails and like exchanging online messages. So a lot of the pages aren't actually full of text, which is fine, but that also makes it like not a true 303 pages, and it makes it easier to get through because of this mixed media format that it's in. So Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda is a very sweet romance between two boys who don't know who each other are. They're exchanging emails under pseudonyms, and we have Simon, our main character, who doesn't want anyone to know at first that he's gay, but someone finds out about these emails and his secret is at risk of being exposed to people that he doesn't want to know. And this is sort of like a very sweet, very fun high school drama, high school romance story that I had a lot of fun with. And there is also, of course, the movie Love, Simon based on this book, and I thought the whole thing was very sweet and easy to get through. So this one, even though it is 300 pages, could definitely be done in a day. Finally, the last two books that I have on here are sort of like honorable mentions because they are a bit longer. And so the first one of those is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, and that comes in at 366 pages according to Goodreads. Of course, The Hobbit is The Hobbit, and so I'm sure there are 1,000,001 editions of The Hobbit that might have slightly different page counts. But if you think of it being somewhere between like maybe 350 and 375 pages, it is of course coming in a little longer than the rest of the books on this list. But with The Hobbit being such a classic adventure story and a book that was initially meant to like appeal to younger audiences, in my personal opinion, it's a very easy read and it's very immersive, and it's not as dense as The Lord of the Rings and the trilogy. So I personally think that like if you were feeling a little bit more ambitious, or if you're a fast reader or someone like that who is looking for a book that is going to take up a day for you, I think that you could get through The Hobbit in a day. And I personally have a lot of love for The Hobbit, so. And then my second honorable mention, which admittedly is way longer than I thought that it was based on the amount of time it took me to read it, is The Lightning Thief, the first Percy Jackson book by Rick Riordan. And my copy of this book is 377 pages, which I almost find hard to believe because I absolutely blew through this one. But one factor again to consider is that Percy Jackson is middle grade, which does make it easier to get through. It's a very fun adventure story. If you like Greek mythology, you'll definitely find it fun to see how those classic stories are being adapted into this very modernized, very like interesting and funny retelling. And I love Rick Riordan. I think that actually for both of the first two books in Percy Jackson, because those are the only two that I've read so far, you could definitely read either one of those in a day. I don't know about in one sitting because 377 pages is a lot for that, but I think that you could do it. So those, I decided to include both of them as well, even though they are a little bit longer. So I think that when all is said and done, there were 17 books on this list, which is quite a few. So if you are looking for a book that you can read quickly, if you are just looking for something to read when you have a free day, I hope that I've given you some good options here with different levels depending on what type of reader you are and what you're interested in. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know if you have more books that you feel could fit this, because of course these are only books that I have personally read. So I'm sure there are a ton more out there. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more content from me. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!